7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. We are sitting here in the virtual Zoom studio, and it's myself and the Tonys. We've got Token and Johnson here. Gentlemen, how's it going today? I know, Tony Johnson, you are still in Florida, maybe recovering from the Corn Ferry event there. Are you making a trip to Bay Hill this weekend?
I'm not, unfortunately. I'll be heading back actually tomorrow, but yeah, and I wasn't able to get into the WGC event, which was also in the local area too, because that was very limited tickets to a lot of the local clubs and stuff like that. So that was a little unfortunate, but yeah, no, it was a good time. I was at the Corn Ferry spot actually 3 days. One of the days just more like on the range, which was kind of fun. Did some stuff with some of the local groups and the Boys and Girls Club, actually, which I've done in Las Vegas. So that was actually really fun. And then, yeah, just a couple of days watching the golf. So, yeah, it's a great area out here. But, yeah, it'll be good to get back home. And I know we have an upcoming Corn Ferry event coming up in Las Vegas at your now home club, Aaron. So that'll be great.
Yeah, I guess that would be considered my home club. And really? Token blessed us in the group text with some great news that they are going to allow fans. So it looks like the tickets aren't going to be cheap, but I think you might get your money's worth in that one. So if you're listening, you're planning on attending this event, I believe it's $100 a day for almost an all-inclusive pass. I think that includes food and drink. So
that's what I read, yeah.
So don't tempt me with a good time. I'll get my 100 out of that. So, but Token, you haven't been on a couple of podcasts lately. I know the new job's kind of screwing with your schedule a little bit, but your golf picks, we've been reading them out on the podcast, and your DFS lineups have been on fire lately.
Yes, they have, was it 2 out of the past 5, 6 out of 6 to make the cut? So,
yeah, it's hard to do.
Yeah. I mean, besides the WGC event where everybody makes the cut, but I think I had.
Hey, you don't have to tell them that. You can just say, yeah, all my guys made the cut in that one. So.
Well, I wasn't even concerned in that one.
Hey, nobody has to know. We got a pretty eclectic show here. We're going to talk a little golf as we do on our Tuesday podcast. We're going to talk a little pro football and college football in here. But I wanted to start off by thanking the sponsors here just real quick. First and foremost, obviously, 12 Ounce Sports Network, where we are aired in audio and video formats. You can catch us at 12ozsportsnetwork.com. You can also catch our audio podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Search 12 Ounce Sports for those. And also on YouTube, search Vegas Squares Podcast. Our prime sponsors, both Vice Golf and Fanatics. Visit lvsquares.com. You can click on our dedicated affiliate links. And when you shop using those links, a small commission goes back to help support the podcast. So we greatly appreciate that. Visit those links at lvsquares.com along with the rest of our sponsors, the HEATR bet tracking app, inthewholegolf.com, and ProAm Customizations. So, all right, we'll diving into this first. I want to talk about this because John Parr and I talked about this, obviously. And, you know, he and I both have well, actually, to break it down here, I've always, since day one, had a love affair with Tiger Woods. He kind of got me into golf along with my grandfather. And, you know, it's just really sad to see the sequence of events that occurred last week. And the events that occurred Sunday was a pretty cool, touching tribute. I mean, he's not dead, but it was pretty cool for them to kind of show, you know, a tip of the cap, as Token likes to say, to Tiger Woods and all he's done for the game of golf. But John was a little bit different of a take. He was not a Tiger fan up until the first crash with Elin and her 5-iron. Back, I believe, in 2008 or 9. And he's since flipped the other side. I think maybe Tiger has humbled his own persona. I think a lot of people like John have come over to that side of enjoying Tiger Woods, the man and the golfer, versus Tiger Woods, the focused kind of killer instinct golfer with somewhat of a bad attitude on the course, you could say. Tony, I think I remember this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think I remember this. You've really never been a Tiger Woods guy.
Yeah, I haven't actually turned the page, although you are right, Aaron. It does seem like there are a lot of people like John out there that, kind of have, I think, softened, as Tigers has seemingly softened throughout the years. Yeah, I'm just never been a big fan, and maybe, call me a little bit old school at times just because I don't like the way he acts on the golf course, and I think it's really, really bad for a lot of the up-and-coming players and just even people new to the game, the constant throwing of clubs and, just getting so angry, the cursing here and there and things like that. Yeah, I get that. We're all going to, get angry at times. That's not really my concern. It's just, yeah, I mean, as you said, Aaron, the complete full-on focus. Well, obviously, I understand that's his job and he's trying to win as much as possible. I think there have been times where he could have carried himself and been a better, person out there. So that's really been more my issue, but certainly never in the playing aspect of it. I've always certainly respected his play. And, to me, that's a separate entity. I try not to lump both of those in. It's never, I would never really want to spend a lot of time with the guy, I don't think, but I've certainly emulated a lot of parts of his game into my own. A lot of things that he said about the game, I try to take as an aspiring junior golfer, myself. And I really picked up the game hard when I was 15, 16 years old. And, certainly a lot there. And yeah, I can even speak for myself in that sense. There were a lot of things that he did. He talked in a video once, long time ago. It was with Mark O'Mara. They're practicing somewhere. I think it might have been with Nike or something like that. They just released a promo video, and he talked about making up, every putt that he stands over, he intends on making. And I took that. That was one of the first things I took when I was 15 years old or something like that to heart. I didn't know what I was doing. I was still shooting the 120s. But every putt I stood over, I decided I was going to just try to make, like literally make everything and believe you're going to make it. It's helped me a long way, come a long way in the game. So, I know that's not what we're looking for here, but I've always, it's always meant a lot to me, in that sense. So yeah, it was nice to see the tribute. And certainly I don't think there's any question the prize pools and the way, how far the professional game has grown. He's the main culprit for that. There's no doubt. Yes, obviously Phil has helped and some of the other players too have helped push the game forward, but he's the main guy, all the way up down from the Champions Tour through to even to the LPGA. I think a lot of people got their start, from him. So yeah, it's great to see the tribute. And, again, as a human being, certainly, you don't want to see any harm, to anyone. And glad, thankfully for the sake, not only is he alive, but, there was nobody else at least near him on the road at that time, because that certainly could have gotten very ugly. So, yeah, just hope he recovers. And, whether he plays golf again or not at the professional level, I don't think that, matters all that much because, he has 2 kids and, a family of his own. And, I just want to see somebody get better.
Do you think he plays golf? I know you say it doesn't matter, but I mean, if you had to assess the situation with everything we heard with what they did to his legs and how they had to, basically tear the car apart. I mean, it just in his age and the surgeries and the previous. I mean, do we think he see him on a golf course in a competitive event?
I think he'll play competitively again. It may not be on the PGA Tour, but I mean, he'll play. My guess is he'll play somewhere again. Again, I don't know. I don't think he's really dedicated. Money wise, obviously he's got more money for generations on end, but. If he gets himself together and starts to play, well enough, there will be opportunities, to go somewhere, to either play somewhere, I know the European Tour, a lot of those events, especially the events in the Middle East and in Asia are really deep. There's a lot of deep pockets there. And so, if he wants to go and play somewhere, like that, I think they'll welcome him with open arms. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's something along those lines. But I would say a competitive schedule, where it ends up being 10 to 20 events a year. I think those days have probably passed us, barring a much better recovery than I think is expected, at least from what we've read. But I would still bet on that he plays in a professional event again. At any level, I think that's the favorite, in my opinion.
What do you think, Toke?
I think his days of competitive golf are pretty much over, unless maybe the Champions Tour. I think it really comes down to really how quick he recovers and how his strength in his leg and if he's able to get his torque back and all that, I mean, that maybe, but it's going to be very difficult for him to pursue this competitiveness again. So
Yeah, because I mean, no disrespect to that what you said, Tony, but if it's not about money, which it's obviously not, I can't imagine there's anything to come out of playing those foreign tours for him and anymore. Tiger Woods, I mean, I think if it takes 2-3 years for him to even get back to a competitive nature of golf, I mean, we're looking at that's the time when Charlie's probably looking at amateur status. So I would imagine he wants to be around for that. I want to imagine he wants to be in. And whatever Sam decides, or Alexis, I don't know what she goes by, but whatever she decides to do with her life too, I'm sure he wants to be around, for that. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing him, because they're going to pony up for Tiger Woods to come play those tours for sure. But like you said, he has generational wealth, for the next 10, 15 generations in his family bloodline. But I mean, just take it as a whole, we're thankful, obviously, that Tiger's alive. The story was much different last year with Kobe Bryant. But, I mean, you didn't just get into golf by doing a podcast here. So, I mean, how has he influenced, you getting into this realm?
what was that again? Sorry.
How has Tiger Woods influenced you getting into the realm? I mean, Tony talked about it. I've talked about it. I mean, he's kind of the reason I played golf. And Tiger said, he's taken so much from Tiger's game, to help him in his career. How did Tiger, if at all, really get you into this realm?
I've noticed, like, especially when I wanted to start to pick up golf and all that, I mean, I like his drive, his, like, competitiveness and all that, and how it destroyed fields, and try to bring out the best of other golfers as well. I mean, he did a lot for this sport as well. I didn't really like his style of play, even though he could drive long distances and all that. I wasn't a big fan of the Nike equipment, where a lot of people became bandwagon fans and all that back in the early 2000s and late 90s and all that.
My first set was Nikes.
Yeah. So
I still have them. They're in the garage. I still got the slingshots, baby.
I know. Yeah, I wasn't like that, but I did learn a few things from him, especially with short game, especially between him and Phil. So
yeah, it's just kind of a bummer. I mean, like I said, I hope I'm wrong. I hope he plays again. I just don't see the need for him to really, and we'll talk about a guy here just a little bit of the show, the Alex Smith. Alex Smith still had something left in the tank to prove. I don't know if Tiger does. We all kind of know he's not getting to 18. But at the same time, everyone in our generation probably thinks he's still maybe, there's still an argument, but you could poll the generation that's around our age, and majority of them are going to say Tiger Woods is the best golfer of all time. That may or may not be true, and that's open to interpretation and debate. But, I just don't know how much Tiger Woods still has left to prove as a professional golfer. So at least playing. But, it's kind of wild to see that stuff. I remember when Kobe died. And I found out from my neighbor, and I thought he was kidding, because I was just like, it almost seems guys like that, you guys have seen The Sandlot, heroes get remembered, but legends never die. It's like, it just feels like, no way Kobe Bryant died. It's just one of those things you don't think that happens, and then you see Tiger Woods' car, or what was left of it. And, I think Rory said it best, the furthest thing it should be is playing golf again. The fact that the kids still have their dad and he's still alive is the big number one thing. So I don't know. I just kind of wanted to get your all's take on that. John and I had a pretty lengthy discussion about it, because I thought it was super interesting how he flip-flopped on him, 10 years ago. So I thought that was kind of an interesting conversation we had. And you guys, unfortunately, I know that you guys had other things going on and weren't able to be a part of it, but I wanted to get your take on that as well. So let's move into the NFL here. And J.J. Watt was kind of the big story for the last month here. The Houston Texans have been a little bit of a shit show organizationally, and they cut ties with the face of their franchise there, J.J. Watt, and a lot of people were really interested in where he was going to go. People were speculating Cleveland, Buffalo, going back home to Green Bay, Tampa, winning a Super Bowl, and ultimately he signs with the Arizona Cardinals. And I think everybody took a step back and basically let out a collective, what the fuck?
Yeah,
And he got ripped on social media for it. They're saying that he went straight for the money. I don't know if I necessarily buy that. And I know you were on the under last year, Tony, with them in the win total, but I think this is a team, Kyler Murray in year 3. I mean, this is kind of the year for Kyler Murray to take a step forward. He's got his receiver. There's a potential chance they get some more weapons in the draft or free agency. I don't think that this is as much of a money grab, even though he did sign for $31 million, 23 guaranteed. I think there's a chance that if Russell Wilson is traded in this division and Matt Stafford is not as good as anybody wants to believe he is outside of Detroit, this could be your NFC West champion in the division that Spike says is the worst.
I knew you were going there.
If you didn't,
I was
say
waiting
that,
for the punchline. Yes. Oh, certainly. I don't think there's any question, Aaron. And we'll see when the lines open, but it's going to be very, very tight in that division. You know how the odds work. Through that, I certainly think San Francisco would be your fourth choice off the board, but even so, I don't think they'll be that low compared to maybe some of the other teams. I guess Seattle's rebuilding a little bit, so maybe Seattle, won't be as high above. They just won the division, but.
Well, if they actually trade Russell Wilson, I don't.
If that happens, then the whole thing comes apart. But I agree. I agree with you there. I'm just not a fan of the. I know I keep saying this over and over again, but Cliff Kingsbury does not give me confidence as a real winning coach, as a guy that can get things done late in games and understand how to put it all together. Again, I can't get past that point. But as you said, if you get that much talent around and the quarterback can go out and win you games, and if he can stay healthy, which I think is a huge key with Kyler Murray, and any quarterback that is going to run as much as he does is always a concern. But yeah, I mean it's a very talented roster, as you said, both on both sides of the ball, and there's no question, Aaron, that they are talented enough to win the division. Whether they can and get over the hump, and we'll see what happens in the offseason and through the draft. Time will tell. But there's no question that he's going to a team that is on the rise, no doubt.
How do you feel about the money committed to him? That's a lot. $23 million guaranteed over 2 years.
It does. It does seem like a lot, especially for a guy that's certainly on the back end of his career. I don't think there's any question about that. He's not nearly the same player that he was when in my opinion, 4 or 5 years ago, he was the best player maybe in the entire league at any position. But, now he's had a lot of off-season surgeries, I believe 4 or 5 in the last 6 or 7 years. Nearly every offseason he has pretty major surgery either during the season, he gets injured or after. And I think it's taken a pretty big toll, especially on his speed. I know some of the people that analyze a lot of the video on defensive players, which doesn't get a lot of the big media hype, as offensive guys go. The biggest change they've seen with J.J. Watt is his speed right off the snap. He's just not able to get into the backfield nearly as quickly as he has in years past. And and as you said, I mean, as the years go on, you're never going to recover that speed. It's only going to get worse. So, in my opinion, I'm not the biggest fan of the signing as per the money. I agree with you. I do think it seems a little bit steep. But what he can bring maybe into the locker room, and bringing guys forward, he does seem to have some really high quality leadership. There's been a lot of people that have talked about through the years playing with JJ, how much he's meant. He kind of annoys me and bothers me a little bit. I know we talked about that, in a podcast months ago. He's a little bit over the top for me. I also really didn't like the fact that he talked about trying to convince Deshaun Watson to stay in Houston and how great Houston's been and, how it's such a wonderful place. And then when he gets a chance to bail, he does. That stuff just pisses me off.
To be fair, I think that the contract, it was a mutual decision.
Yeah, I understand. Again, he has to do what he's got to do. That's fine. You should do what you need to do for yourself. But then don't spout out all this stuff and don't talk about, we need our quarterback here and we wasted a year with Deshaun and I'm sorry, Deshaun, and take out an ad in the Houston Chronicle. Enough.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think that if the Texans still owed him a nice chunk of change, he'd be on the Houston Texans roster next year. They had a chance to get out for nothing, so they took it. I mean, that's fair. I understand the theatrics are a bit much. I mean, look at this cold tub picture. or he's sitting in a freaking frozen lake. That's his new.
Yeah.
That was his new thing. Like, I mean, I get it. I can respect that. I mean, I think a lot of that gets excused based on the work he does in the city, and the situation with the hurricane and raising $30-40 million.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's a tough one. I just, I think that it's hard to say. I can understand why people on social media or people say that it was strictly a money grab, but I mean, you dive further into it. I mean, you look at it. Okay, so they said, I can understand if he went to Buffalo and they were saying, that's going after a ring, or Tampa Bay, I can understand. But Green Bay, I mean, look how many years in a row they've choked. I mean, I understand that's home. That's fine. And you look at Cleveland, I still don't think Cleveland's a J.J. Watt away from being a Super Bowl contender.
Good point. Yep.
So I don't think any of those teams are so far head and shoulders above Arizona.
I agree. Definitely.
Yeah, Arizona's up on the rise, and this whole team. I actually pulled up the odds for the division while you guys were talking, and it actually kind of surprised me. Rams, of course, are the favorite, but only a slim favorite at plus 180. The Cardinals are fourth on this list at plus 650.
Well, you look at, I mean, I can understand that. As long as the Seahawks have Russell Wilson, they're going to be they're going to be there. Mm-hmm. And with all due respect to the San Francisco 49ers, with the amount of injuries they had, they still put together a respectable season. If those guys are healthy next year,
true.
That's not – I don't know if that's as big of a disrespect to the Cardinals as it is just respect to the conference spike. Oh, wait, he's not here.
That division is sick. It really is. Yeah, it's true.
So, I mean, it's just a tough one. I think he has a tough path to the Super Bowl, but I don't remember really anywhere – and correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody can find it, anybody listening, I don't remember anywhere that J.J. Watt came out and said, I want to win a Super Bowl. I mean, I'm sure he does, but that wasn't like – I'm looking for the next team to play for strictly to win a Super Bowl. I don't think he said that. No, I mean, look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. They said, you can go play with your brothers. Well, are they one J.J. Watt away from winning a Super Bowl? I mean, for the first 11 weeks, maybe. But for the last, 7? I can't say that they were.
No.
So, I mean, I respect J.J. I kind of like this move, this unorthodox, this situation. I mean, if his goal is to win a Super Bowl, that's a tough road to hoe right there. And I probably would have gone to the Chiefs if my goal was only Super Bowl. I think they got the easiest road to get back. I think the NFC is loaded. And the AFC, in my opinion, is Kansas City, Buffalo, and like a second tier of everybody in the AFC North. Except for Cincinnati.
That's a fair point.
I mean, that's essentially true. Yeah, I can't argue with that.
Certainly. So, yeah, I'm curious. I know that J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones. If J.J. Watt can be anything like he was, 3-4 years ago before all the injuries started kicking up, that's a hell of a tandem right there. Chandler Jones is one of the most underrated defensive ends I think in the league, and I don't know. Maybe you can back me up on that.
%. He was the best player on that team for probably about 2 seasons in a spot where that was a bad team for a while. And he was the highlight reel every week getting off the edge. And really great in New England, certainly before that. There's no question about that. Yeah, he's a great player.
Yeah, so another great – well, go ahead, Token.
Absolutely. Fair point. And biggest question mark to me is JJ healthy enough to even play a full season, if not 2?
Yeah, do you think he's going to live that contract out, the 2 years?
Oh, good question, yeah.
Unlikely. I know the past 5 seasons, he's pretty much played 2 full seasons. So
correct, including last season, though. So you never quite know with that. So, all right, let's switch gears here to a quarterback. Alex Smith was officially released by the football team here today. I saw that come across the ticker. During his time with Washington, after being traded from Kansas City, he was 11-5 in games that he played. Not the Redskins. Well, I guess at one point they were the Redskins. The Redskins/football team was 11-5 in games he played. They were 6-26 in games he did not play. And I mean, I don't know. I guess I understand the cutting. You know, there was a great story looking to go in a different direction. But does Alex Smith find a place next year? And where does Washington go at this point? I mean, are they really going to put their eggs in Taylor Heineke? I mean, I know they signed him to an extension. He had a decent playoff game. But, Token, where do you think is a good landing spot for Alex Smith?
It'd be kind of funny if he landed in Philly right now. But ideally, I could see Las Vegas potentially picking up if they can get rid of Carr for some reason, but I just don't see that happening. It's tough to put a home on Smith right now, and with all the potential moves with quarterbacks and all that. I mean, Houston, if they get rid of Deshaun, possibly, but I don't really see that happening either. So,
Tony, is there a starting job out there for him?
I don't think so. And again, I'm not trying to rain on the great parade that Alex was this last year, and it was certainly a wonderful thing to watch and witness. I just don't think so. There's too many quarterbacks for how many teams there are. There's no doubt about it. Tyrod Taylor's the odd man out. For the Los Angeles Chargers too. Who I think is a quality quarterback, and he's going to be finding a job somewhere else too. And certainly with the years, he's only 31, I believe. So he certainly has time. Why would you go to the realm of Alex Smith when clearly I know he was returning and he was coming back last year, but he just didn't move very well. And that was the great thing about Alex. When he finally found his footing in the NFL is that he moved so well. He was a very underrated, I think, athlete just in general. We saw him run a bunch at college in Utah, in the Urban Meyer system. But, I mean, even in the NFL, when he needed to get out of the pocket and when he needed to shuffle and shift, he was always able to do so. And such an accurate ball down the field. But, without that movement, he's just not the same guy. And, how do you recover that? Yeah, maybe, after some games and an off season, he looks a little bit better early into the next season, but, he's not getting any younger, obviously. He's already an old player. So, for the position, it's just, to me, I don't see it as a starter. And the fact if he gets into like a backup type of role, is that a role that he really wants to have? I don't know. Maybe he'll battle it out somewhere, in training camp. With one of these other upstart teams, but something like Denver, where the case is, or I guess Chicago would be potential, or wherever there's non-clarity at the quarterback position. But to me, it's not a road I would want to go down. If I was a team, if I was a GM, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm sorry to say.
Well, I had two options actually. You said one, Chicago. I thought if they can either draft a quarterback, because obviously Trubisky's not going back, and the Nick Foles train wreck and everything. Yeah. So actually, Chicago was one of them. But here's another one I throw out at you: Jacksonville. Don't have to start Trevor Lawrence day one.
Well, I think all this billing with Trevor Lawrence is that he's, supposed to be so ready to play. It's going to be tough to not have him, play right away. I don't know. Again, I'm not fully convinced on the Trevor Lawrence. I know I'm one of the few people out there that's not fully on board. And the fact that he just gives up he just takes so much abuse. That has to change. That has to change very, very, very quickly. And while they won't call running plays like they did a little bit at Clemson, I don't see how that's going to end well. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not convinced there. So, but the problem is you don't really have years to give. These teams don't see this anymore. It used to be where, if you were in development phase, you felt like you had a couple of years, 2-3 years. Nobody seems to see that way anymore. The only team that I've found that seems to believe that they have more than a season to get things right. And it's funny because it's Token's guys. It seems like Detroit is fully in on a complete rebuild. Like fully. They are almost giving up this next year, and you just don't hear that anymore. So I just don't know, Aaron, if a team is willing to do that. Not to say it's a complete throwaway, but if you're going to sign Alex Smith, pay him an X amount of dollars, and then start him, over whoever, Trevor Lawrence or whoever it might be, your up-and-coming player, I think you're kind of almost giving up the season in a way. And just nobody seems to want to do that anymore.
Well, to be fair, Urban Meyer obviously is not going to get fired after one season, I don't think, unless he just literally loses, the college thing just doesn't work out, which, I can't remember the last college coach. This is probably not right, but Jimmy Johnson maybe. I can't remember the last college coach that was successful in the NFL.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Spurrier,
Right.
Saban.
Yes.
So, unless – I think
Pete Carroll count? I don't know if that counts, right? Not really?
Oh, yeah, I guess that counts. He did go NFL, college to NFL, but he had some – so, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one. But we'll flip gears here, and what Washington should do at quarterback, what about your guy Tyrod Taylor?
Yeah, I've always been a big Tyrod guy. I've always been in the Tyrod camp. I loved him a lot when he was backing up Flacco for that 5 or 6 years. He would play in the preseason and just be awesome, just lights out, and then he wouldn't play another snap the rest of the year. I felt like he never got a fair shake. That Buffalo team, I will say to this day, that is the worst playoff team I have ever seen, barring some of those like 6-10 division winning teams or whatever. Actually getting a wild card. That team was awful. It was so bad.
Well, they showed it in the playoff game too.
That's true. They were really bad in the playoffs. That's fair. But they still got there, and that's why I knew that Sean McDermott was the guy for the job. It was that team. And Tyrod had a really, really good season. Without really much around him, and I've always liked his decision making, and really thought he was a smart player, and just did what he could. Didn't really try to force too many balls. I really liked him. So, I think that'd be a great option. A really great option for anybody. Anybody that, whether it's a stopgap or whether you really are looking for a guy that I think you can lead the franchise for 3, 4, 5 years. Absolutely. I'm definitely in that camp.
Well, it is believed that Washington was involved in the Matthew Stafford sweepstakes. They offered a first and 2 thirds, and that obviously didn't get it done. Mm-hmm. So the other question is, if they're willing to offer that, obviously I know it's going to take so much more. Is Washington realistically involved in the Russell Wilson / Deshaun Watson sweepstakes? Can they be?
I don't see why not. It depends what the teams want in return for said players and situations like that. As of now, they got no quarterback to offer with those picks too. So
I don't think anybody's offering. The only trade that I guess makes any sense that I've seen is 3 firsts and Christian McCaffrey. Nothing's really involved a quarterback at this point. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side, if one of those quarterbacks is traded, that opens up homes for Tyrod Taylor and Alex Smith. Could you see one of them? Could you see Alex Smith quarterbacking the Houston Texans? If you want to talk about punting a year, if they actually trade Deshaun Watson.
Wow, that would be a punt, yeah.
Possibly, and yeah, I wouldn't be too shocked if Houston had that happen, and yeah.
Because they don't have their first-round pick in this class full of quarterbacks. So if they're trading with, let's say, the Jets, then okay, they might get their quarterback. But if they're trading with Washington, that pick's, I think, like in the 20s. So they're not getting it.
Yeah, I want to say it's 22 or something like that. Yeah.
Well, they made the playoffs, so I guess they're in the 20s somewhere. So they were the worst playoff team record-wise. So, anyways, it's kind of weird. I am in the camp that neither of those two guys are suiting up for their respective teams next year. Even though Deshaun's going to try, he's going to be the kid that throws the fit in Kmart for as long as he can until everybody ignores him, till the story goes away. So. But I'm really shocked about these Russell Wilson trade rumor. He's come out and said, well, we didn't request the trade. And, so I don't know where these are all coming from. Who's coming up with this story? Because is it Russell? Is it Sierra? Is she concocting this whole thing to get out of Seattle? Because she's made it clear, I think in a GQ interview, she's not a fan of Seattle.
Yes. Yeah, I remember hearing about that, yeah.
Every
it's
time.
A great question, Aaron. Really
every time they ask Russell Wilson, he's like, no, we're good. So where is this coming from?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think there was a lot of negativity with how that offense rolled in the last 6 to 7 weeks. And, Wilson was I think the leading MVP candidate in the first, half of the season, or at least
I think we all thought that, yeah.
Yeah, 5, 6, 7 weeks. And and then things went so south so quickly, that it seemed like everyone sort of jumped ship. And I don't know. It's hard to say. It's who to believe, who not to believe. But I would say that, if you're in a management role with Seattle, it certainly doesn't hurt to try to understand or get a feeler for what the market would be.
Oh, 100%.
Not to say not to say that it needs to be a full rebuild or anything like that. But, if you can, it's still a team, obviously, with quite a bit of talent. There's no question about that. When they got healthy defensively, they became a good defensive team again. They went from so bad, to good. So I think there's still ways to move up. And again, Wilson is not a young player at all.
There it is, 31 versus Deshaun, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes some sense. But again, who started all that? How the rumors go. I know agents have, they put out stuff that that never comes back to them. It seems like they're really good at that. So who knows? I have no idea, but it makes some sense. The whole Deshaun Watson thing, as you said, the kid in the Kmart screaming. I mean, that's again, as you said, they have no pick, as you said. So it would have to be with a team that has a pick, because you just can't give up a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, who was one of the best quarterbacks in the league last year, bar none, no question, and then not get any sort of quarterback or top pick in return with what is thought to be a very deep quarterback draft class. You just can't do it. You cannot do it. So I think Watson for sure stays. But yeah, Wilson again, more likely than not. Yeah, I'm with you, and I think he stays there too. But maybe with just some feeler, just to see what the possibilities were.
The thing I'm shocked about, and if Token, I'll get your opinion on this. If I'm Urban Meyer, I'm kicking the tires. I'd rather have Deshaun Watson than Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah,
I'm seeing how many number one, the number one pick plus what it would take. Maybe I trade the number one pick and James Robinson for Deshaun Watson, and maybe something else. But I mean, if you're Urban Meyer, would you rather have the potential of Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson right now? 25? Correct me if I'm wrong. 25, 26.
Yeah, if I'm Urban, I would definitely take Deshaun and give up little picks and stuff like that, and know what to expect out of him, and know his talent, and know what you're working with. I mean, compared to somebody fresh off the farm, pretty much. So,
well, I mean, look at this. You have the number one pick, the 33rd pick, and maybe, like I said, a bona fide starter right now. That maybe another first round pick. That might be enough to get Deshaun Watson out of Houston. I'd do it. I'd do it because look, I think it's been proven this year with the Brady Belichick saga that a quarterback makes a coach's job a lot easier.
Yes.
A good quarterback makes a coach's job a lot easier. So we'll see. So, all right. So we're going to take a quick little commercial break here. When we come back, I've got a couple of fun topics to talk about it's not a large week. We've got conference tournaments in NCAA basketball, but it's not a relatively large week in sports. We've got a lot of regular season games coming up. But on the other side, I want to talk about a couple of fun chats. I want to get your all's opinions on this. So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes on the other side. It's the Vegas Squares Podcast.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money, and we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
At Amazon, we're pretty good at getting things done. We're pretty good at solving problems. COVID-19 is the biggest challenge we've had to face. But challenges are what motivate us. Like flying masks to our employees around the world. We're doing everything we can to get you what you need, and doing everything we can to keep our people safe. I'm former Navy pilot Sarah Rhodes, and I'm proud to lead our Amazon Air network.
All right, and we are back here with the Vegas Squares podcast. We've talked Tiger Woods, we've talked J.J. Watt, we've talked Alex Smith, and many other quarterbacks in the carousel that is 2021 here, as we do every year, it seems, in the offseason. But I want to kind of go a little bit off the path here and talk about a little bit of nostalgia, I guess, for the next two segments to wrap up the show here. And there was a Twitter post by Tavon Austin. I'm sure you guys are both familiar with him. That had the top 10 most exciting – I'm going to pull it up here. Top 10 most exciting NCAA players of all time. And he was number 2 in that, which, I mean, some people may believe that. He was pretty fun to watch. That whole West Virginia team.
Oh, that was fun. Yes.
Was fun to watch then. But the 10 that were listed, I don't know if this is by him, but he posted it and asked, what do you think? And obviously that always leads to debate. Many people obviously saying that he's got recency bias here with most of it. But I'll read this down to you. And then I kind of want to get yours. I don't need all 10, but I kind of want to get your all's top 3 most exciting in your opinion. But here's the one that came from Tavon Austin's Twitter account. Number 1, Reggie Bush. Number 2, Tavon Austin. Number 3, Saquon Barkley. 4, Christian McCaffrey. 5, Johnny Manziel. 6, Lamar Jackson. 7, Braxton Miller. 8, Peter Warrick. 9, Michael Vick. And 10, Jabril Peppers. So some of those I agree with. Some of those I can't get down with. But I'll read you mine first, which ironically 2 of the players are on this list as well. 2 of the 3 players I saw in person. One of them I only seen on television. And I have to agree with Reggie Bush. I think he was one of the craziest, the most exciting college football players I've ever seen. That whole team was exciting. But watching Reggie, every time Reggie Bush, took the football, it was, how far can he take this? He might be able to run this for 200 yards. The second guy that was also on this list, I saw this guy in person when I was a kid, just due to my ties with Florida State University, and that was Peter Warrick. That guy was the human joystick. And Token, I don't know if you're old enough to remember Peter Warrick, but he didn't really pan out in the pros, which is unfortunate. I think he had a couple years with the Bengals. He had some flashes as a punt returner, but another guy, whenever he touched the ball, it was just amazing watching what he could do with the football. Honorable mention here to Devin Hester, who was another one that anytime he touched the ball in college, it was phenomenal. Actually, I hate everything about Miami University, but those teams in the early 2000s with just stud after stud. I mean, you could pick from any of those, and I'd be okay with it. But actually, to me, this one's you're not gonna find this on many guys' lists. But to me, Kevin Smith, he was a running back from 2005 to 2008 at UCF. He almost broke Barry Sanders' rushing record. And that one year, watching him run for 240 yards a game, the way he was just kind of like these guys. He was a little bit bulkier than the Reggie Bushes and the Peter Warricks, but he had the ability to juke you, stiff arm you, and run you over all in the same play. So he didn't – actually, Detroit Lion. He got drafted by the Lions there, Tony. He also didn't – he was part of that 0-16 season, though.
Yes.
But those are my 3 most exciting. Again, honorable mention to Devin Hester, and Michael Vick obviously was pretty fun to watch as well. So, Token, who's your top 3 most exciting players that you watched in college football history?
Number 1 to me, of course, is Reggie Bush. I mean, definitely very exciting to watch him play at USC and all that. I also really liked watching Tim Tebow with the Florida Gators, and then Braylon Edwards as well.
Yeah, he was a bowler in Michigan. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
I thought for sure you'd go with Charles Woodson, but Braylon Edwards, a nice touch there too.
No, I remember a little Woodson.
Yeah, he might be too old for you. Yeah, Charles Woodson was fun to watch. And was that 96, 97? That was right about when I was getting into football. So, Tony, what about you?
Absolutely. Well, good lead-in, because my number 3 is Charles Woodson. That was right about when I got going, and I was such a Michigan. Well, I mean, I don't like Michigan or Ohio State, but it was always one of those things that we were taught not to like Michigan in the household. But man, it was amazing how often they were on TV, and it was 10, 11, 12 years old or something, and it was just it was a joy to watch it. Plus, the guys on both sides of the ball, you just you didn't even get that. You never get that now, of course, but
Right.
even then, it was so rare. He was so much fun to watch. So, yeah, Charles Woodson comes in at number 3 for me. This is tough. Number 2, and it happens to be just one game, that strikes in the mind.
Oh, wait, can I guess?
Go ahead.
Is it Vince Young?
It is. Number 2 is Vince Young. Watched him play a lot, even leading up to that point, because now I was very much a college football fan, and this was 2003 through 2005 or something along those lines. And it was I started sports betting right about that and just before, and so really diving into the players and watching all of the national games, on a weekly basis. I was living in Kansas at the time. It was a blast. There were a lot of my roommate was a huge college football guy, so I was finally fully delved into it, and I watched Texas nearly every week, and he was just a guy with the ball in his hands that could do anything, and was just a really, really, really great player. And then
maybe the best game of all time right there. Texas USC.
He was incredible. And then it's interesting because I don't really know what to do with this, because it's a difficult thing, of how we decide as exciting. What is exciting, but and I was never a really big fan of his, and I still am not. But I will say that Tim Tebow always had me believing that Florida was going to win every single game that they played. And I'll say this: I laid a lot of points with Florida. Again, this was relatively early on in my sports betting time. I laid a lot of points for a lot of seasons that he played, and it was profitable because they covered some big lines back then, and they could just run out the clock too. What a team that could just run out the clock on you for a quarter and a half, and you had zero chance to win the game. And I just really a great player, and could with that offense that there was, he could throw the ball down the field, just so much time in the pocket, a lot of playmakers, as you talked about. So I would say that's probably, it's close between him and Vince Young. Really like both of them, and I hate to go with 2 quarterbacks to go 1 and 2. But always nice to give some running backs some love here and there, but I couldn't do it. So that's my top 3.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll tell you this, as a person who was in college, it was a bad time for Florida State football to be terrible when your biggest rival had the greatest player maybe in college history. It was just dark years. Yeah, watching him. Saw him live. He was on another level. To me, he wasn't exciting, and I to say this objectively, of course he was exciting. But you're right. He was just there to beat the living shit out of your team. Yeah.
It depends on how you define exciting. Exactly. So,
that's what I'm saying. That's why this was a opinion. Yep. Like I said, Kevin Smith's not going to be on a lot of people's radars. Yeah. But, watching him, Peter Warwick, I was surprised to see him on this list. He was phenomenal, but, that was great 20 years ago. And, this list with Lamar Jackson and Christian McCaffrey looked to be more prism. There's guys – Barry Sanders, Tommy Frazier. I don't know if you guys remember Tommy Frazier.
Oh, yes.
There's a lot of guys I felt got, overlooked as a prisoner of the moment. Ricky Williams, Adrian Peterson. Again, Pat White, Steve Slayton were 2. Devin Hester not even on this list. And one I thought, I almost put him in my top 3 just to bring him into the show. But I'm going to bring him into the show anyways. And I don't know if you guys watched him because you were involved in college football or watching, Tony, as you just alluded to, and probably as much as I was. Colt Brennan was a joy to watch in Hawaii. Colt Brennan was so exciting.
I tuned in every week. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. Colt Brennan, and I think that was 2007, something like that.
Maybe even a touch earlier than that. I think
earlier?
He started 2005, 2006, right after Timmy Chang. Timmy Chang, I think, was 2005, so maybe 2006. Maybe.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, he was always fun to watch, and the best part was he was the last game on every week, at least on the East Coast. You're watching Hawaii football at midnight, and you're like, this is awesome. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, our last segment here. I want to wrap up with this. I was kind of let's preface this. I'll be perfectly candid. I was bored at work doing the Google searching and playing on my phone during break, and I found out that John Belushi died today in 1982. I don't know if you guys remember John Belushi from Animal House. Really funny guy. Unfortunately, died too early from a drug overdose. But it got me thinking, for purposes of the podcast. I think John Belushi was a guy who had so much more left to provide us in terms of comedy. I wondered what athlete you guys liked watching that his career or her career was cut too short in the middle of their prime or the middle of their career. And Token, I'm kind of curious to hear yours, because I know that you're slightly younger than us, so that your era may be a little different.
Yeah, I mean, when you approached us with this spur of the moment question, it was hard to think of somebody. I mean, of course, one of the most notable ones to mention that you even mentioned earlier, and Tony even said, is Dale Earnhardt and him going out the way he did, but that is not going to be mine.
Made a right turn.
Yeah.
Too soon?
Is it though? That was like 20 years ago.
Oh, I'm just trying. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty close to 20 years ago. Yeah.
Long time.
Mine is actually a Detroit Lions guy. It's Corey Smith. Him and a few other.
Got stranded on a boat.
Yeah, with Marquise Cooper and all that. I mean, Smith part of the for Lions team and all that, and yeah, they were never able to find them. But
that's the crazy thing. They never washed up or anywhere.
Yeah, that I remember that story. That's amazing. Yeah.
They had to have been eaten. I don't know.
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the same general principle there, and I hope I don't take your guy Tony here, but it's the same thing with Jose Fernandez. You remember the Marlins pitcher that just disappeared? That they said was more alluded to alcohol, but people underestimate the ocean there, and it finds a way to bite you. So what about you, Tony?
Nope, that's you led right into my point. That's not my guy, but that was when you brought this up to us before the podcast. That was the first guy I thought of. But I still wasn't fully. I've never been the biggest baseball fan, and I've always been a big White Sox fan. But I've never gotten into a lot of the other teams. So I knew he was, and he was obviously a very good pitcher. But it was just the first thing that popped in my mind. But then I thought about it, and another one of those things, just learning the game, and it was my first love of team sports was basketball. And there's really no question. The more that I think about it, that it's got to be this guy. And again, he's not the most well known because he was a European player. But his name was Drazen Petrovic, who was in the NBA for, I think, only about 5 or 6 years. He started out in Europe. He finally came over here, I think, when he was like 25, 26 years old, played for the Nets back in the weird New Jersey days when they had a lot of really bad teams. And this guy was an absolute lights-out shooter. He actually played pretty strong defense, especially for a European player, which it was, known back then at least that the Europeans didn't really play a lot of defense and they flopped a bunch and stuff. He was hard-nosed. He was intense. And, Reggie Miller has talked about how it was the second best player he's ever played against, behind Jordan. And this guy shot 44%, I think, from three throughout his entire NBA career. I mean, and he would shoot it from anywhere. These are not just spot-up shots. I mean, he was taking shots with people in his face. He never really got into scoring. He was always playing kind of the 6th, 7th man role. Wasn't allowed to do his thing. Wasn't able to handle the ball very much until his 3rd or 4th season in, when he finally was starting to play some minutes. And Drazen was an incredible player. Died at an unfortunate car accident, I think, when he was 32, 33 years old in 1993. But, again, I watched a lot of Eastern Conference basketball growing up in Chicago, and so I used to watch him quite a bit. I got to see him play live as well. Always good to see the guys with the European influence. My dad's a huge sports fan. He talks about how great these European players are. We don't always get to see them. So it was one of the guys I got to focus on, and he was a wonderful, wonderful player that, was taken too soon. So that's definitely my answer.
Wow, I did not see that coming. I've never even heard of the guy. So that's impressive. I kind of, when I came up with this topic, a number of names came to mind. Obviously, like I said, Jose Fernandez, Pat Tillman's the low hanging fruit there, but doesn't I don't know if Pat Tillman was necessarily one of those primetime electric players. He was just more of that blue-collar, gritty guy who, just went about his business and did his job. He wasn't flashy, but Dale Earnhardt obviously came to mind. The three guys that I thought, the first one I ruled out, that was the player I felt like was taken away from me, was Derek Thomas. I was still a kid, and I didn't really, the Chiefs weren't a team I obviously rooted for, but I always, having the record for sacks in a game, and he was always just electric. He was kind of that second coming of Lawrence Taylor. Nobody really wanted to line up against him, and he stood up. He wasn't a down technique kind of defensive lineman. He stood up. He played linebacker. He was kind of the first guy to really do that. That kind of, you see him all the time now. So Derek Thomas was another guy. Payne Stewart. That's about right when I really got into golf with the Tigers and everything. And when he won at Pinehurst, obviously that was really huge. And just, my grandfather was a big golf guy, and I used to sit and watch golf with him. And, he never had a bad thing to say about Payne Stewart, and I don't think anybody did anyways at this point. They're not digging up his old tweets anytime soon. But, it was quite unfortunate to see, the tragic plane crash with him, and, what could have been with him. He wasn't the best golfer, but he was always, just the most enjoyable and this is a weird word, but the most lovable golfer, I guess. He always had a smile, never had a bad day. But the player I ultimately settled on here was one that I think was taken too soon from a school that I absolutely despise, and I hate everything about it, but they produced, like I said, stud after stud after stud, especially in the early 2000s. And that was Sean Taylor. God, the boy created highlight videos for hitting, which unfortunately now is such a no-no. I mean, he would never make it in today's NFL. He would be broke. But just watching him play, the ferocity of which he played the game, modeled, ironically, he said one of the guys he modeled his game after was John Lynch. I never would have seen that coming, but it's a spitting image. I mean, other than, their race, but, just watching those old school hard-hitting guys that made Hall of Fame receivers think twice about wanting to come up the middle, unless your name was Keyshawn Johnson. But yeah, I hate to think of what we lost when, his home was broken into and he was killed. They say it was gang violence. We're never going to know. But I think Sean Taylor was taken, one of an electric player taken too soon. And I'm sad to see I'm sad to know what we didn't get to see out of him. So that was my pick, Sean Taylor. But I think there's so many guys, and especially like guys like you said, Dale Earnhardt, and guys in their prime that you just never know. I mean, who knows? He could have lived and flamed out, but I just don't think that guys like that, with that kind of drive, that would have been the way that they would have gone. So that was my pick. So that was just kind of an interesting topic I came up with at work, and I thought it would make for an interesting stroll down memory lane with some of these guys. So. All right, let's wrap it up here. Obviously, we appreciate you guys listening, tuning in. You can catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just search 12 Ounce Sports. YouTube, search Vegas Squares Podcast. And, of course, us and all the shows at 12ozsportsnetwork.com. I want to thank our sponsors, 12 Ounce Sports. Our title sponsors, Vice Golf and Fanatics, lvsquares.com. Visit that website. Click on those dedicated affiliate links and shop and help us out, help out the podcast. The HEATR bet tracking app, inthewholegolf.com, and ProAm Customizations. For the Tonys, I am Aaron. We appreciate you guys listening. We'll be back next week with more golf podcasts. So hopefully you guys are doing well with your bets. I know that John has put together some pretty good picks for you guys this week so far. Hopefully the weekend will continue to be good for him. So again, we appreciate you guys listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Follow us on Twitter at Vegas Squares. Check out the website, lvsquares.com, and good luck on your bets.